So yeah, Cochran's was pretty cool this winter, Ben, with getting our 5-year-old into it.
What was crazy is that you see Jane still walking around, and like you're like an Olympian for $300 for a season pass for my whole family. There's an Olympian at this mountain that will teach. I mean, it's just bonkers. It's such a Vermont thing too.
My wife's best friend is one of the Cochrans, or my wife's best friend growing up, I should say. So she knows everyone. I don't know them, but she's told me all the stories about every injury and the different doctors, because my wife's going through a knee blowout now, and
Oh, dude, sorry.
trying to figure out how she's going to get that taken care of, or if she is.
Yeah.
But yeah, like every Cochrane has got at least a silver medal, right?
It's crazy. It's something crazy like that. And yeah, like so my mom grew up ski racing down in Woodstock at Suicide Six against Jane Cochran. I think my brother used to ski race against Bodie Miller. It's weird how many like Olympians come out of this like small little area, but it's all because we have pure ice to ski on. So if you're good on the ice, you can do it anywhere.
That's
Like,
right.
like the New York City saying, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. It's like that's ski racing in Vermont.
It's funny. The first time I went snowboarding out west, after running the trees here, it was like, wow, it's like it's like a groomed trail. There's so much
Oh
room
my
between
God.
the trees out there.
They are so spoiled out west. My buddy's going out. He came over yesterday to pick up a ski bag, and he's going out to Telluride. And I think, oh no, this is his second trip. He and I went to Squaw once, but I'm like, you really have a hard time coming back, and it's just like, what in the world? And then I feel bad. I remember it's probably like 2008. I was in London, and you're in the tube, the subway, and I was looking up, and there was an advertisement for Stowe, Vermont, and they took a picture of that mountain, and the guy must have been on the car parking lot pavement to make it look as big as they did, because he was like angled up,
Hey, we're
and
about to go live here. Hold on, Ben. All right. So now we're out there. And so you were saying you got a guy who's lying down in the parking lot taking a picture of the mountain to make it look like it's gigantic.
yeah, I'm like, all these people in London are probably going to spend 5-10 grand to take a family vacation out to Stowe, Vermont, and they're going to be like,
Hey man,
As
it's
you
a
said,
much bigger mountain than they got in London.
it's true. You're absolutely true. But Chamonix, you've got France like right there. You go hit the Swiss Alps. I mean,
But
I don't know.
Ben,
Maybe it's just gonna get out of there.
I got one word for you. America.
America. It's true. Can't downplay America.
So this show is going to be a little different today, everyone who's tuning in. It's talking about something hot, and what's
Not right now.
Well, yes, but normally, it dips and then it goes back up, but but it's also highly contested. So we're going to dive into all of that, and we're going to be going back to the early 1900s in this one, talking about how it all leads up. And
Oh yeah.
yeah. Before we do, though, want to introduce Ben Hadley, and after that, I'm going to go into a long monologue to help set this up. So
yeah, where Ben, where have you not worked?
That's God. I was literally talking to someone yesterday, and he goes, "Hey, so we were working with dealer.com, Then we go over to Dealer Inspire. We go over to Prodigy. We went over to Clairvoyant. I'm like, this is crazy, but I've literally worked for all of them. So obviously met Snyder over at DDC, and he used to be so tolerant with me. I used to just run up to his desk and go, Alex, I have an amazing idea. And he'd go, okay, what is it? And he was one of those few people in the building that would not just go down the rabbit hole with me. He would give me a shovel. Be like, let's go further. Now
you must have been on somehow you got on his good side.
Yeah, I think so.
Probably you know what Ben has that a lot of people don't have? 2 ears.
Yes.
That he uses. I think that's his secret weapon.
Too much.
Gotcha.
A
lot of people don't have those anymore.
You and Joe Pistel too would be like, let's jam. Recently, what I do now, Autogenius is like sort of like, think of that as a think tank, trying to create a place where a ton of really, really progressive automotive guys can come together, not to sort of talk about the problems, but talk about the solutions. Actually, some of what we're talking about today is contributed from them. And then I also do advisory work for SaaS companies in automotive. So basically go-to-market strategy, like, how do we position this thing? There's a lot of guys out there, brilliant minds, but auto's its own niche. And I was that like 22-year-old that, my family had a few stores here in Burlington, Vermont, but you don't really know auto until you've spent some time in it. And it really is its own universe. So I kind of play translator a lot of times for those companies.
That could be an important position.
Yeah, it's crucial. In my opinion, it's crucial. I've seen too many companies come into this space thinking they're going to just do the regular, whatever, Silicon Valley playbook, and it fails miserably because you're not translating it properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. Communications are key.
Nah.
So, with that, one of the things that Ben is into, and I think we'll see more of Ben throughout 22 because there are some pretty cool things he's got in the pipe. But one we wanted to talk about today is it helps dealers utilize cryptocurrency as a form of payment. And before we dive into the details of what that is for a dealership, I think it really helps to understand why a dealer might want to consider doing this. And it does play back to like what is going on with the currency that we typically use, the US dollar. And
that's a great question.
Yeah, and let me kick this off, and this might be a little long, but please bear with me. And I also want to preface that we are going to try our best to stick to things that are known or weren't they're not things that we're just sort of coming up with. And
so you're not going to have your conspiracy hat on?
Well, I mean, even speaking fact about some of this stuff, there's a different story every day about something different and different side every time. So who the hell knows? But we do know something, and I want to concentrate on two things to set this up. One is 2008. So between 2008 and 2010, there was $787 billion that was approved in the first round of approvals for help to bail out banks under TARP during the subprime mortgage financial crisis. And it wasn't enough. So the Fed came back and they asked for another $750 billion. And by the time all the bailouts were approved through Congress, it was around about $3.5 trillion that was giving out during this time.
And that's just what we know of. Yet we've got now more evidence showing that was almost, what, 10?
Yeah, hold that thought for a moment. So in 2011, the first story broke from Bloomberg that they believe that the U.S. banks had received $7.77 trillion, not $3.5 trillion. So Bloomberg was highly contested by Bernanke, who was head of the Fed at the time. And there was a lot of going back and forth. However, there was an economic institute called the Levy Institute. I believe they're of Bard College. And they did a FOIA request on the Fed, and that's Freedom of Information Act. And about 2 years later, so in 2011, they published their findings from that FOIA request. What they discovered was, yes, 7.77 trillion was probably given to U.S. banks. But they also found that about $29 trillion in total, to include that 7.77, was given to other banks around the world. So this was going mostly to European banks, according to their report. And so Bloomberg comes back, they echo this, and even the Huffington Post has got stuff on this. There's things out there. So if you want to go, I would advise using DuckDuckGo, not Google, and looking up Levi Institute or Levy Institute. Is Levy Economics Institute, FOIA, the Fed, 2011. It's all there. Help yourself. So basically what they established in 2011 was something I didn't know about until last year. And I assume others didn't know about it either. Everyone I brought this up to has said, what? This wasn't on the news. Why was that not in the news? That's a big fucking story. Excuse my French. But it wasn't. So, when I hear things like inflation being due to supply chain issues because of a pandemic, and knowing this, that maybe there's a lot of money being printed that we don't know about potentially, I start to dig a little bit. I start to wonder. And something else threw a recent red flag for me. So some bank employees, and this is as best I've heard it, okay? And I'm not hearing this directly, so again, I'm just some dumbass on a show every Friday up here in Vermont, and I wear that dumbass crown proudly. So I'm not a smart guy, but I do listen. And so there are some bank employees out there who were getting concerned because their bosses or their employers were doing what is considered the walk of shame in the financial system, or so as it's been told. And the walk of shame is declaring like, oh my God, we've got a problem. I need to go to mom and dad and get money to get out of this. And in this particular case, mom and dad would be the Federal Reserve. So they go to the Fed to take money to get out of whatever issue is going on. And that's just like when it happens, all other banks are like, whoa, what's wrong with them? And so a number of banks apparently were going to the Fed. This would have been we found out about it, apparently started in like 2019. So they were going to the Fed. Let me get my numbers right here. So the Fed was giving out $50 billion a day with the note being due the next day. All right. So it was a cash flow, take care of your cash flow problem. The note's due, but if you don't pay it, you pay interest. It's just a due date on loan. All right. So many banks started doing this. And so the Fed, realizing the popularity of this thing, they upped the due date to 3 days. Then they upped the due date to 2 weeks. And then it was extended to 3 months. And by April of 2019, apparently, the Fed was handing out loans with no payback due date that we know of. There probably is one, but we just don't know when it is.
Choose your own payback.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And they also upped the amount from $50 billion to $150 billion per day. So what it looks like was going on was there was $1 trillion per week being handed out during this time, and this continued for a 95-week window that is known of. Right? So that takes us well into 2021. So that's you do the math on this. 95 weeks, $1 trillion a day, $95 trillion. It's assumed that 30 trillion was what was handed out prior to the trillion per week number. So that brings us to a total of $125 trillion was given out to various banks. And so we don't know whether those banks paid any of that money back yet or not. So, but we do know that there was a ton of money given out, and a ton of money given out in 2008. And it makes me a little bit like, what's going on here? And it puts some doubt in my mind about who's really in charge and running our financial system and our monetary supply. And are the things that we're being told as little peasants really what's truly going on? That, and if our banking system, our currency is built around trust and faith, mine's shaken. So,
yeah, just shaken.
Well, right. Coincidentally, throughout all of those events, I'm betting that you would see spikes in Bitcoin circa 2008, circa 2012, circa like there's these moments where Bitcoin was at one point sort of a gauge of how much that trust was breaking down.
Mm-hmm.
Now you kind of start seeing it almost go in parity with the markets. If the S&P 500 dips, Bitcoin seems to get hit too. People almost treat it more like a tech startup, I think, than they used to do as this complete anti-inflation hedge. Let me see hey, what's up, Jim? Yeah, I agree, Jim. That is, it is a red flag.
Is it a private bank though? There's a lot out there in quote unquote conspiracy land that it's a cartel of the major banks in every country.
Yeah, we shouldn't even say Rothschild because
well, that's a whole other rabbit hole. But the I have spent some time on the Federal Reserve website, and it claims that it's appointed by Congress, and it pays Congress back. So any surplus of funds that is earned in interest on its loans and whatnot is paid back, and they do provide financial statements on this stuff. And so, yeah, maybe. I just want to point out the other side in that.
Well, right. It's like you guys hear the Nancy Pelosi joke of sort of being like one of the best investors, like she's consistent at beating the market. And you're like, oh, well, that's super convenient that, that's who's keeping everything in check. Perfect. It just kind of seems like there's this bubble of
there was I think there was a Twitter feed that you could follow. I think it was what was it, Nancy's Stock Market Watch or something like that. Yeah. Of course, it has since been censored and removed, but there was a group that was following everything that she would do in the stock market in order to, just follow what she was doing. She's got it, apparently has it down pat, and was, obviously making a lot of money. Another one is that gets raked over the coals for that is I think Dan Crenshaw. He sort of speaks out of one side of the mouth than the other.
Well, he was recently found on the World Economic Forum website, wasn't he? So
he's been on there for a while.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I heard a lot of people were added to that were never confirmed or asked. They were just sort of,
like Tulsi,
someone that was someone that was sort of up and coming and was making a name for themselves, and they just sort of just threw him on the site as being recognized. I don't know what their affiliation actually is.
Hmm.
At least that's what I've been able to come out of that.
Yeah, I think, I guess going back to the intro there, which is like, we could have probably thrown in some background on like getting off the gold standard, sort of like how did that, increase control that the Fed has over the government. How many central banks are there? Is the central bank system a commonplace thing? Yes, it is. Like there's so many other variables, I think, obviously what we've heard is already kind of alarming. But I think you also have to have this backdrop of like, hey, what is our dollar really even based on other than faith and trust? Well, it used to be based on the gold standard, and now it's
Gold
not,
standard.
right? And so now you have nothing really
There's
backing.
actually, let's throw another element of what the dollar is based on. So if it's based on faith, it's also based on our ability to make war.
Totally. 100%. Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, if you put a gun to someone's head, they'll believe it's valuable, whatever you have in the other hand.
It's how a lot of central banks came into play, I believe. It's, after we went into Iraq and Afghanistan, they had a central bank not long after.
Yep.
It's been
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in like keeping politics out of it, you look at how fast Russia's central bank got slammed, right? So we're thinking about it right now from a point of view of like, hey, here's our central bank, and it can do whatever it wants. Cool. But you also, because it's a centralized entity, you have to also consider the fact that like, wow, what if the rest of the world just said, you know what? We're going to mess with that centralized entity. Right now, we're kind of in, with NATO, et cetera, our allies doing that to their central bank. And regardless of what your opinion on it, personally, I agree with doing it. It does show the vulnerability of this system, which is everybody sort of just becomes a line item in a computer system that can be deleted or added. Money can flow towards or not flow towards. And so even with that backdrop, I think between sort of the gold standard and between sort of this ability to kind of get yourself off of being just a line item, that's where crypto, has its origins, decentralizing all of that power and control, but also allowing kind of faith in that particular asset to sort of be or to kind of create this new gold standard, allowing that faith to create this universal standard.
So, a little background on cryptocurrency and how it works. Bitcoin, especially, I think it's the most well known. It's all based on a blockchain. And so there's a general ledger that's publicly owned. Nobody controls it, right?
Right.
Right. Yep. So in order to, so everything is a line item there as well, right? That's basically what
it just can't be deleted by any single individual.
Yeah.
That's the major difference.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So you're looking at one giant Excel spreadsheet, and basically the nodes or the people that are mining, basically you're verifying that those things did really occur, and but no one individual really has the authority to alter that Excel spreadsheet alone.
Gotcha. And every transaction is in the ledger, right?
Right. Yep.
So isn't that the ultimate form of control, of like knowing what XYZ spent money on here and there? And
oh my goodness, the power that you would have with that, it's just especially if you have the ability to control what they can and can't, what a consumer can and can't buy based on what their previous purchases are, then along with your credit score, and to go down, another hole is which, they're already implementing, which I had published something over on Dealer Refresh probably a little over a year ago, just to put it out there, see if anyone would bite, see if anyone knew anything about it. And that was just around the whole ESG scoring. Probably quite a few people have heard of that now, but this was pushing 2 years ago.
You might need to define it, Jeff.
ESG scoring is right now, it's just implemented across a lot of businesses and banks, but it's your environmental,
social.
Yeah, it's
and what's G?
I forget. That's horrible. I should know. I've only read on it a million times. They've used a couple different, but it's a full-on social credit score based on equity. That's what it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, environmental, equity, and I forget what G is. Governance, something like that. So, they're able to look at, from a business standpoint, are you implementing good safety for the environment? Are you utilizing green renewable energy? And matter of fact, the article that I had sort of republished, I need to find it, was around banks. Yeah, it was around, there you go. It was around banking and the diversity for banking and climate, and how climate change affects banking is what it really drilled down into. I mean, it's one of those crazy headlines. You're like, what? But then, it's like anything with the whole Build Back Better or Green New Deal. What they do is they just wrap these wonderful words of, climate and environmental and diversity and equity. And I mean, who doesn't? I mean, they're all great things. Who doesn't want all those things for the next generation and for everyone out there? But unfortunately, once you really dig into it, you can see that ESG score is going to be your report card that follows you around. And, once it's tapped into some type of way to be able to govern that based on your social credit score, based on what you purchase, what you don't purchase. If you eat meat, now I'm going down a rabbit hole, but I mean, it's pretty obvious at this point that they could determine, who gets a loan, or if you do get a loan, what's that percentage going to be? It's that type of power is crazy. And what's even more scary is I've talked, I'll bring it up with certain people, people that I suspect probably have heard of it, maybe know something a little bit about it, and they have no idea what the hell I'm talking about.
I've never heard
and
of
I'm
it.
Like, how? Yeah. You never heard of ESG? And
I actually, it's crazy when you were saying ESG, I thought in my head, oh, you're going to go and talk about a social score in China.
Yeah.
That's where my brain
they're the first ones to implement something like that.
Yeah. It's like, is that the credit, like the social score that they have over there? Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that we were making one over here, which is crazy.
Oh, it's already done. Type in any business name or any of your larger banks.
Yeah.
And do a search with ESG in the phrase, and you'll be directed to a lot of different pages that talks about that particular bank and how they are implementing ESG. Or again, you got to be careful, because a lot of times if they don't use ESG, most of your big companies, your banks, will be using that acronym, but they will change it up from time to time for smaller businesses on personal levels.
Jeff, they focus on the environmental aspect right now. So what's your environmental footprint is the main point. So if you see anything about that, keep reading if it go, when it goes into anything social or beyond.
Oh, you guys are
That's
like,
it.
it's like I'm trying so hard to like. It's really tough for me to not put on the rabbit hole conspiracy theory. I don't want to go too deep, but it's like there was a joke that I heard when I was younger that there was something like, oh, like it was something like you just wait until they figure out how to tax air. And then like carbon credits happen like 2 years later. And I was like, oh my God, this is not a joke anymore. And it just feels like this is like right in that lane.
Oh, it is. It is.
Yeah, I was thinking through the implications of kind of a social credit score. And like, you already see people that are adopting Bitcoin right now in nations that have less trust, right? So like China,
El Salvador.
Russia, actually, El Salvador, Ukraine, where there's uncertainty, you'll see Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
What I think is crazy is, have you guys heard of the digital yuan?
Mm-mm.
So China is actually trying to do a
China's,
full,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. But
Oh.
it's like supposed to be the benefits of sort of a ledger of a Bitcoin, of a cryptocurrency, except it still allows them to have that delete button. So you imagine like right now you're like a billionaire in China and you're like, oh, I might want to like get out of here. Things are looking a little freaky. I'm going to go to my yacht in Switzerland or something. And then delete. Like all of your wealth has been removed and moved over to someone else that is more loyal, that is more whatever, that is not acting out of line. And is that a preview for some of what you're talking about, Jeff? Like, if we're only 2 years behind them on the social score, 3 years, whatever it is, it's like how close are we to also getting the pitch of like, hey, we've moved the US dollar to a digital currency, pure digital now. It's on the
Well,
ledger.
they've already. I mean, that's already been loosely announced. And matter of fact, if you go to the WhiteHouse.org website, you can find some of the different articles published.
Yeah, it's being loosely stated as the Fed.
Yeah, it's
coin
already
right
being
now.
talked about, for sure. And I think that's definitely what they want to implement. Some of the different, I guess conspiracies around that is, would that be something implemented, on the federal side, a one world currency of some sort, or would they somehow come in and take over Bitcoin, or will they, exist parallel? No one really knows the future of that. But
Yeah.
Back to the whole ESG score and how that could play out for car dealerships as well, is, again, it will start with large businesses, move down to your small businesses. And this is another way to sort of, COVID did a great job at closing a lot of small businesses and catering to the large businesses. This could be another wave, another way to squeeze your small businesses, small dealerships out, because the cost that would be involved in updating your facility in order to get a high enough ESG score for, are you using enough renewable energy at that particular business or dealership? Do you have enough diversity at the dealership? All those different things are going to go into it. And I mean, as a business owner, crazy. And then you're going to have a carbon tax, or some type of tax if you're not environmentally friendly enough. And who knows, what that's going to do to your bottom line. So we were just talking about this yesterday or the day before, Alex, just talking about how I think we were having the conversation on the forums, how many more smaller single point dealerships or just small groups, when are we going to see those disappear and just fold into a much larger group of some sort? And, it's almost like every 2 or 3 years we see something else that's going to drive that to happen quicker and quicker and quicker.
Yeah, it's there was a comment from somebody on LinkedIn a moment ago, flash on the screen. We'll get it back up there. So Yeah, if cryptocurrency in its current shape, where it's being mined with lots of computing power, is what the Federal Reserves and the countries take on as their currency model, then yeah, it would be hypocritical to have environmental in the ESG score if they take that on too. But I believe the Fed coin, I think it's got an actual acronym for it now. It's like BR or something, something like that. But the I don't believe that's going to be a mined coin that requires lots of computing power to keep finding more of it, kind of thing. They'll just say,
Well,
we're going to launch this thing with 60 trillion of these things, and that this is the exchange rate to the dollar. And by the way, we're taking your dollars now; they're going away, and it'll be like an exchange rate where in the past, when currencies have gone out, they've gone defunct. And this is not like the dollar is not the first currency to be in its death throes, if that's what it is in right now. This has happened many, many, many times over.
Many times.
Yeah. Almost every currency they all die at some point. So this is natural. So anyway, it would just be like 25 cents of your dollar is going to translate into this new Fed coin. And that's what we move to going forward. But it's the other components here that are a little.
Shout out Kevin. So there is another way that I think a lot of people are starting to look at Bitcoin, because it does get a lot of, on the environmentalist side of things, a lot of hate for sort of the amount of pollution that it creates just in the supercomputing that it takes to make. The argument, I think, is a really interesting thought experiment, which is that actually Bitcoin is a battery. And if you want to see a live version of this working, you can see it down in Texas, but another good example would be a state like Vermont, actually. So imagine Vermont, which is like, well, I think we're lucky today. It's like partly cloudy instead of deathly cloudy. Doesn't get that much sunlight. They moved to solar. They overproduce solar in the summer, but they need to figure out a way to subsidize costs in the winter when it's cloudy. So what you could effectively do is you could make way more solar panels than you need to. So in the summer months, you're collecting a ton of those rays, turning them into Bitcoin, turning that Bitcoin as storage of a currency, right? And then come winter, when everybody's bills naturally go up for energy usage, you start selling that Bitcoin to offset everybody's bills and keep them flat. And that's actually a real thing that's happening right now in Texas. They're saying, hey, we've got these oil refineries, and we've got these wind, whatever, a bunch of different versions of energy that sometimes run, sometimes don't, or sometimes it makes a lot of sense to run, sometimes it doesn't. Because usually it's like demand on, demand off. So what they're doing instead is when it's low demand, or i.e. cheap to mine Bitcoin, they're keeping that stuff running. And then when it gets to high demand, right, and now it's really expensive to run all that stuff, they can actually use that Bitcoin that they mined to offset those costs. And it's become a really, in Texas of all states is actually proving this could actually work.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that at all. That is very interesting. So what would be, unless Alex, you had something else to ask, but I wanted to get into like, what's the advantages of a dealership right now accepting, a digital currency such as Bitcoin? Would it make sense to look at other digital currencies?
One word.
Even get into something like that? What?
Diversification. So up until recently, like doing a Bitcoin transaction in the United States for a good has not been easy. So
no, it's sort of tedious.
Yeah. So like that's the beauty of the dollar right now. It's super easy to transact with.
Totally.
And Yes.
But the digital dollar, right? But have you guys recently had like some cash on your hand, like on hand?
I have been getting a lot more of that lately.
Okay, but does anybody else now go open their wallet and look at whatever the $20 bill and go like, I don't think Instacart takes this. I don't think DoorDash takes this. I don't think Grubhub takes this. I can't Venmo this to anybody.
Yeah,
This
I see
thing
more
feels so
places
used.
now that don't accept cash, only accept card or something.
Yeah,
More so than you see. We don't accept credit or debit.
totally. Like Stripe and Square just made it so easy now to be digital that it's almost money is starting to feel very 1.0 to me. It's starting to feel very much like actual physical cash. Like this is you'll have to carry this around. Ugh, I don't know. It's all grubby. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not
But
I'm not seeing the vision anymore for physical, and it's only enhancing the case that I'm seeing for digital. For crypto.
yeah, for crypto, the whole Fed coin thing scares shit out of me though. And then yeah, just
Absolutely.
and again, how many people that aren't aware of it? How many dealership owners aren't aware
I mean,
of
that's
this whole ESG coming down the pipeline?
well, that's the thing. Like, there's so many examples of this where the road to hell is paved in good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that governments do that are reactionary to something going on today, and then 20 years later, it's used for some other means, for some other purpose, and that's just knowing that is what concerns me about it. And again, back to what we started with, like I'm a little shaken on the future of the dollar at the moment, and one who advocates diversification. What could have a life later, and I'd like to have more of that.
100%. I'm 50-50. Like I have 50% of everything that's liquid is in crypto. The other 50 is in traditional stuff. And even in that 50%, it's, that's in crypto it's pretty diverse. I would say like, call like major cap coins like Bitcoin, Ethereum, up and comers, AVAX, Solana. Actually, I got
Can't
out of
forget the
Solana.
Doge.
Yeah, then I got a couple shit coins, some of those Hail Marys that we'll see if they pan out.
I got one or two shit coins.
Gotta have a couple of shit coins, You never know. That's like half the fun of this new flip. It's like, how empowering it is to, first of all, imagine a guy that makes Dogecoin out of thin air. It's like everybody has the ability to be their own Federal Reserve. Mm-hmm. And that is like, you go from watching in awe the power that has been centralized. And then you realize that we're in this transition to giving that power back in a decentralized world. And I think that's something that, like, yeah, I agree, diversify all day, but there's something from a value standpoint that, like, this is a moment that you actually, it's almost reminds me of getting the first websites online, where it's like, it doesn't matter, how big your storefront was. Your website was this new thing that got to represent so much of you, and there's a lot of power in that. I kind of see the same thing happening here.
Well, it took a while for it to catch on. Especially, being in the dealership level. I had my own personal website before the dealership had a website that I was working at.
Yeah.
I was sort of the dealership website for the Volkswagen dealership that I was working at. And, it took definitely several years to adapt. As much as you hear about crypto, you would think more people would be invested into it, but yet
it's not an easy transactional piece, Jeff.
Small.
Right.
that's the thing. It's just not it's not as easy
Right now,
to
it's
use.
just investment. Yeah, I've used Bitcoin to purchase a handful of things. I'm talking about a small handful. The best one, quick story, was many years ago. My son wanted some type of online video game for his computer, and they only accepted Bitcoin for payment. It's like, I'm going to go through all this just, to buy a video game. So I threw $50 on a Coinbase, bought some Bitcoin, and I think I had 2 or 3. I think it was like a little bit less than $1, a little bit less than $2 left in the account. And it's like, screw it. I'm not going to go jump through hoops for $1.50. And then 5, 6 years later, I go to sign up for Coinbase, totally forgetting that I had Coinbase. And somehow I get into my account and realize that $1.86, whatever it was now sitting in over 1,000. And I'm like, God damn. If I just had $30-$40 left over in that account, that'd have been a pretty thing.
No. but we're still early.
But again, imagine. I don't I don't like go too off base with it, but when I asked the first time, what's the advantages of a dealership getting into Bitcoin? Your response is more around just offering different methods of payment. Are you working with any dealerships that have implemented this? Are you, and if so, what's the feedback been? It seems to me like obviously something like this is something that maybe if the owner of the group or dealerships is really sort of progressive in that on that front, and they're into Bitcoin themselves, that it would make sense that maybe they would look into it. And again, it could be really beneficial for the dealership as a whole. If you look at the predictions for Bitcoin, again, no one can tell the future, but there's some crazy predictions out there that, from people that have gotten it right time and time again. So, it's for a dealership owner to look at it as just another form of payment. I think you'd be overlooking the actual opportunity and possibility behind having crypto as a payment.
Yeah, okay. So a couple of questions to answer there. One, I think, which is definitely some dealers that are using it, and we got to hold tight to NADA to kind of hear on that announcement, because it's notable.
And would you say that you're repping a company that makes it easy for the dealer to transact in Bitcoin or in cryptocurrency?
Yeah. So one of the advisory roles that I'm on right now, it's called Scion Digital. They are basically the Route 1 or dealer track of crypto lending and crypto transacting. Wow, so just like you do a finance app, you do a KYC with them, know your customer. Like blink twice in a camera, show them a driver's license. After that, you basically go and they'll display all of these different lenders, both decentralized and centralized exchanges. So like Aave, Nexo, BlockFi, Compound. And they'll come back and say, hey, you have a couple different options. You don't have to actually sell all the crypto if you don't want to. Maybe you think that this thing's going to go to the moon. So we can give you a collateralized loan in fiat against it, so you can just hold on to that crypto. So rather than the car being the collateral, their crypto holdings become the collateral. So you have like 50K in crypto. You're like, give me 25,000 in a loan. I also just don't want to take care of the capital gains tax of selling that 50K. Maybe I got in early. It's going to be a 35% trim on that, right? So there's actually this like lending ability of fiat that makes it really easy just to accept crypto that way. And that can work for like a down payment, whatever, parts, warranties, doesn't really matter. Then there's full crypto transactions that they'll do. That's basically like hey, I got some Bitcoin. Will you accept it for this car? And there's a couple different ways that they can execute on that. I think on the diversification front, like we're seeing dealers right now interacting with dealers where their average sales manager has $1 million in crypto. We're seeing one of the groups that we're working with in California. They're building a dealership in the metaverse. They're already doing NFTs of the VINs for the dealership of the metaverse. Like part of what's getting me really excited right now, and like I really do think we're at this moment in auto where we traditionally were like looking at other verticals around us, and we're kind of like, real estate's doing that. We should try doing the auto version of that. I think we're actually at the moment where auto is starting to take off ahead of these other verticals, like, and people are going to start copying us because transactionally, as a stat of first home buyers last year, 12% of them used crypto to put money as their down payment. 1 in 8 of first home buyers in 2021 were like, yep, I have a bunch of crypto that I'd like to use to put as down payment on this house. A down payment on a house could have been a car, right? Easily. So I'm seeing, like there's just this massive opportunity for dealers to be kind of the first to market on this.
Most of the people I know who are holding Bitcoin right now have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands in it. And they look at it as, investment portfolio. But I've had a good chunk of it at one time. I've moved out of it. But I would have loved to have used it as a currency itself. It's just been difficult to find ways to do that. Back when I had it, it was like Silk Road. It was like one of the few places you could spend that money. And I never did that. But if it's made easy for somebody to go basically pay, instead of cash, you pay crypto for a Porsche, then boom. That's why not?
Yeah, and
well,
and
I saw Kevin Fry he said something about Weiler Automotive is accepting crypto. I wasn't aware of that. So, Kevin, you get a chance, maybe jump in the forums under this thread and provide some feedback who you're using for that service and how it's gone and such. Or we could get you another Refresh Friday here coming up. I'd be interested in hearing about that.
Yeah, I think this is the next wave. You also just got to consider that another trend, right, that's happening right now. I was talking about it earlier this morning on a different Clubhouse. Is you watch dealers that are really, really progressive right now are starting to pay really hyper attention to a SaaS metric, which is lifetime value versus cost of acquired customer. Because they're realizing that as things like this Carvana Odessa deal, right? As things like that happen, if you can lower the amount of money that you're spending on acquiring a customer, or you can increase the loyalty of that customer, the lifetime value of that customer, then the value of the business as a whole goes up. And so what I look at that as is traditional businesses are trying to kind of get into SaaS. SaaS businesses, though, are trying to get into fintech. So if you watched AutoFi, if you see Car Gurus, you see all these companies that are all of a sudden starting to get into the lending space. I'm lending as a service. I'm partnered with Car Gurus. I'm whatever, right? Cars.com, actually, even with the recent Credit IQ and et cetera. Yep. So, and then you go, what's the next level from fintech? Well, from fintech, you go to crypto. And why are we making all these little leaps as businesses? Well, a SaaS business gets a 12 times multiple on average. A fintech business gets a 20 times multiple on average on revenue. And then a crypto company right now is getting like 160 times multiple. So not only is the trend line already here in terms of the consumer demand, right? All these people wanting to spend their money or at least use it and leverage, but from the investor community behind it, which are really going to be the drivers of whether this outcome comes true or not. They're saying, yeah, for every dollar of crypto revenue we see, we're willing to multiply that by 160 is essentially their bet. Look, I'm following the money, right? If the money is saying it's worth 160 times more than the dollar that's right in this left hand, I'm following that money, just like everybody else is.
Hey, Ben, there was a question from Kevin O'Brien, I'm throwing it back up on the screen, about how the IRS looks at cryptocurrency. And I know they're trying to tax it from an investment standpoint because so many people have put in $1.86 like Jeff and made $1,000. So when it comes to actual transactions, that's just, that'd just be like using a peso versus a dollar. I don't know that if the American business accepts a peso, then the IRS really shouldn't have any bearing on that, right?
Well, no. So this does get a little complicated. If I bought Bitcoin really early on, and I bought it for $1, now it's worth 50,000. I do have a capital gains on that Bitcoin when I sell it, or when I trade it for a car. And because the real technical way this works is you go Bitcoin gets translated to either stablecoin or fiat from the bank. Stablecoin is just a cryptocurrency that's pegged to a dollar. So that takes the volatility out of it. The purpose of stablecoins is really just to remove volatility out of these transactions. So if I go from 50K, $1 to 50K, 50A to 50K of USDC, a stablecoin, that consumer still has a tax liability from that 1 to 50 gain. Now, is it 15%? Is it 35%? It depends on how long they held it. And most centralized exchanges will take care of the paperwork at the end of the year, right around now, to let you know what you're gonna owe. I think what Scion's doing that's different is they're allowing for that to be collateral instead of. So, if you take a loan, this is what super duper wealthy people do, right? Is Jeff Bezos, freaking Elon Musk, they just take out monster loans against their stock. It's why Steve Jobs got paid $1 salary. He wants all stock because you can just take out a non-taxable loan against your stock and not pay anybody. Now, so long as the stock market keeps going up, or your stock keeps going up, and you don't hit a certain threshold and get a margin call, you technically don't have to pay that back. There's some more interesting things with how you can you can eliminate those tax burdens completely when you pass away. We don't have to get into that, but look, it's a pretty amazing way for people that have crypto to leverage to get cars.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, if you're an owner of a dealership or a small group, why would you not be considering or looking into this? And then you say the company that you sort of work with is called Scion, but spelled CION Digital. Okay, yeah, I just jumped on their website. That's what it looks like.
Oh, so you just moved the I and the O and coin over, huh?
Yeah. So, but they've got different solutions, and I see here that they actually work with car dealerships. They're in the automotive solutions, along with other financial services and big ticket retail. Is there anyone else in automotive that's with the crypto? Who was the
Looks
company
like Wiley
that
was saying
like
BitPay.
yeah,
So right
BitPay.
here, BitPay
I'm
on
guessing
12
that they're
different
probably
currencies. Yep.
they're
Oh,
probably
I
doing
am
that a little
familiar
bit
with
more
BitPay.
manually. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my guess is, and it's probably just to take crypto and immediately swap it into fiat, as opposed to working with like people that are banks in the crypto space that can lend um, against the crypto. I'm guessing that's the
It says
difference.
accept or send, BUSD, GUSD, Bitcoin, of course, USDP. Yeah. Never touch crypto, no fraud charge, chargebacks, use any wallets, reach hundreds of millions of
There you go.
customers. Yeah.
So BitPay is just a
Yep. Just what you said.
yep.
Yeah.
If I was a dealer principal right now and it just made the most US dollars of my career probably. Yeah, I would love to start taking some other coin.
But they're just using it for a transaction. What they, or someone in that position could be missing out on is capitalizing on the investment side of Bitcoin for the dealership, or for that group.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because there's two, with that 12% of first home buyers that that use crypto as the down payment, right? Likely what they're doing is probably what BitPay does, which is like they just liquidated it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They took what they had, they got rid of it. Would that number be higher though if they had the option to hold it? Because if you talk to people that are really into crypto, it's like the people that are really into Apple or Tesla stock. They don't want to sell.
Yes.
They're holding on for dear life.
No, they don't. They hold on to it. Matter of fact, I think it's crypto.com that offers you right now a hell of a return on your crypto. I mean, it's better than any savings account.
Of that. I have Celsius gives me 9% on my USDC.
Yeah.
Voyager gives me 10%, I think, on USDC. Those are stable coins. Those are pegged to $1. So I just every month with Voyager and every week with Celsius, I get a check.
Yeah. So why, again,
why would I ever want to sell that?
Should be considered,
right? Instead, like a guy like me would go, cool, give me a loan against it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I have a 3% loan, but I'm still making 9%. So I'm still positive 6.
Yeah.
This is like this is the arbitrage moment of like a lifetime. And so I actually think
because it probably isn't going to last forever.
No. I mean, but as this starts getting more adopted, the amount of people that are going to be wanting to transact some way, be their own bank, right, and need to interface with you as their own bank, as their own Federal Reserve, that's going to happen more and more. So, I think the liquidation thing is like, that's great because there's definitely hunger, or there's people that are thirsty for that right now. But you're exposing yourself to this whole other cohort of people that are like, no, you can't rip this out of my bare hands. Oh, wait, but you'll give me a loan against it? Oh, okay, cool. That's great because I think it's going to go to the moon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So give me a loan, give me a little bit more next year.
You sure used a bunch of triggering words in that sentence, or what you were saying a moment ago. You said BYOB and thirsty, and it's Friday, and there's beer in the fridge.
It's just tea.
So are you working with dealerships, setting them up with some of these different services, or providing like some type of counseling or consulting for a dealership that wants to get into this? Where do you fall into all this?
Strictly with Scion.
Okay.
Mostly just on like their go-to-market strategy, helping them sort of like navigate NADA, set like partnerships, that kind of thing. What I can tell you is we have some crazy partnerships about to drop at NADA.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's going to make some waves. But I think the cooler thing right now with Scion is really that they've designed the product to really seem very similar to like a Route 1 or DealerTrack finance app. It's just the workflow for an F&I manager is actually the number one thing I worry about the most. Because most technology in auto fails to get adopted because we think product first versus process first. So we make these cool new products and then we throw them on some dude's desk and he's like, how do I use it? This is like very metaphorically similar to a process that they're already doing with the consumer. And actually, I think that's helpful for the consumer too, because it's not very disjarring. But in terms of me, I'm just a geek and lucky enough that they tagged me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you seem geeky. Could you help?"
Yeah, there's a little more to it than that. Sometimes. One thing you said that's it's kind of funny. It came up earlier today is we were comparing some of our development work to prior lives, and the what you just talked about is the difference between sitting back and taking feature requests and just bolting on to a software versus actually saying, okay, what's the workflow? What's the problem? And then building a solution that fits that. Anyway, kudos to you for knowing that's the way. So many companies don't do that.
Yeah. Is there any advantages around? I feel like there'd be something around the manufacturer with using crypto to lease a vehicle.
Okay. Well, hold on. We said we weren't going to get into.
Let's keep the money in the dealer's pockets, Jeff. Come on.
Well, no, I didn't want to get into like too much theoretical, but
maybe there's a tie in there for the dealership. I don't know.
Let me throw it in.
I'm not quite sure how this works.
At least. So imagine what I'm doing, which is, able to take a loan out practically for free and still make 6%, right? So back to that example where I basically go, cool, let me like leverage this, let me get a little bit back. And I owe you a little interest, but the interest you're paying me is way higher, so who cares? Imagine that for the floor plan.
Yeah, well, that's
you take out
what I
right?
was thinking. Something like that, yeah.
So how much more leverage do you have if you don't actually have an interest rate that's working against you, but an interest rate that's paying you, where you're actually collateralizing the cars, right? That's your collateral. You're taking a loan out against it, and you're just doing that same arbitrage that I'm talking about. So you're not actually negative. You're appreciating by holding the vehicle, by not the velocity mindset that we're all kind of used to, but literally giving like something that's exactly the opposite. I mean, that's actually someone else in the space is working on that right now that I've worked with a few months ago. Not ready for like game day, but there's definitely some notable people behind it. And it just changes the game completely when, the individuals become their own bank, the businesses become their own bank. All of a sudden you start seeing the powers shift and it changes all the business dynamics with it.
Fun.
Yeah, man. It's going to get wild.
Well, if someone wants some more information or reach out to you, Ben, we always host a recording of this in the forums.
Sure.
So I'll send that to you. Maybe you can just drop some of your contact information. And I also sent you an email earlier before we went live to make sure you update your profile. You started your profile I think in 16 or 17. Your last login was in April of 2019.
God, I feel like I'm being
See,
shamed right now.
dealer refresh is on the block,
Shame.
tracking every transaction.
I wasn't shaming you by any measure, but you might want to update some of your contact information.
we do hold that power.
I know. Yeah, you're the centralized guy. Yeah. I'll make sure to update my profile after we get off here.
Yeah, check your email. I reset your password and stuff for you, so it should be pretty straightforward for you.
And then Ben, I would like to see you back on in the future. I know you were showing me a different venture. We'll just call it the Headless website, and
oh man,
that'll be a cool show.
Oh, I am so
let's
pumped
do that.
to show this thing off. It is, as a preview, I didn't think I could get excited about the word website in 2022. And I'm like, I dream about this thing. It's so crazy. But in fact, I think it actually ties into what we've been talking about, which is we're making it so that it's a decentralized play. It actually empowers the end user and the end business, as opposed to sort of being controlled in a central way. So actually, we can continue the theme sort of here. It's not a Web3, but it definitely is kind of taking powers from the center and giving them back to the dealer.
Sounds interesting. Yeah, we'll have to have you back on. It's not very often hear someone get all really excited within the industry here lately, especially for us people that's been in it for so long and talking about the same topics. It's like it's nice when you find something to really get you excited again.
I know, man.
Especially over websites.
I'm telling you, this is the year. I think the last few things I've been involved on were CDPs, which is like a very progressive vertical thing, data lakes that are going to become accessible to dealers, crypto, the Amazon audience play with these guys, Cognition Digital, all of the things that I'm probably, like, in the last 2 months, really excited to see get released to NADA or just intimately know about, are proving to me that auto is at a cutting edge right now, that we are definitely no longer the copy and pasters. We are the leaders, because these are like products that you would expect to see at like TechCrunch or something. These are the things that you're like, I'm surprised it's not in that. You remember that show Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
You ever watch that too? It's a fucking great show. Yeah, it's like these are those type of like next level products, and I'm just pumped that I feel like auto's about to have kind of a renaissance.
What dealership bought space in Metaverse, and what's the point of that? I'm still very unfamiliar with.
Okay, well, this I would say you gotta have.
Let's make this show scary. A lot longer.
No, Brian.
Yeah,
Kramer.
no. Well, we'll have you back on for that. Just we don't have to
do a metaverse only show.
Yeah, we'll do that.
We should get Bob Lanham and Brian Kramer. We'll like get in the metaverse and do this show as as heads. I love it.
Perfect.
Cool, man.
That'll be fun.
All right.
Awesome, guys. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
You guys. Thanks for enlightening us on the crypto world. Sounds like there's still plenty more we could talk about. So we'll definitely have you back on and go down that route.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, everybody. It's BYOB thirsty time.
There you go. Get yourself a beer. All right. Later.